Hello YouTube. It's been a long time. Welcome back to my 120 gallon reef tank. I'm still here, it's still going. It's been such a long time since my last update. Here you can see I made the last video in May 2017. My last proper update was probably June 15th, 2016. So that's almost 5 years ago. So it's the same tank. I did lose a lot of corals and fish when I moved house. That was my fault. I was ill prepared. But yeah, the tank is the same. It's the same 120 gallon, which is 120 centimeters long, or 4 feet long, 60 centimeters tall or 2 feet tall, and 60 centimeters front to back. Next to the tank I have a frag tank. This frag tank is 100 centimeters long. It is 60 centimeters front to back, but it's only 30 centimeters tall. So it's half the size roughly of the main display. In here I only have one single fox face, as you can see, and a bunch of frags. Now next is moving on to my frag rack system. Here you can see it is a double system, or a double, two tanks, one above the other. It's a standard storage rack. Each shelf can hold up to 150 kilos. So that's why I have like smaller tanks here. They are 100 centimeters long. They are 50 centimeters wide and only 20 centimeters tall. So they're very shallow tanks, so they don't weigh too much. Now these are located in my fish tank room. So all of these frag tanks were DIY frag tanks. I ordered the glass online through a company that you just send them the dimensions of the glass you want. You can tell them where you want to have the holes drilled, and the glass arrived to my door, drilled, cut, perfectly cut, really straight, and all I had to do then was silicone it together myself. So the two smaller frag tanks and this frag tank were DIY, where I just had to silicone the glass together and basically plumb it up myself. Okay, here's a panning shot of the whole system, the two frag tanks on the rack, the main display, and the bigger frag tank there. Next I'm going to talk about the sump. Here's the sump. It's the same sump as I've used before, just a few different modifications. The same tank. I believe it is like something 90 centimeters long, 50 centimeters wide, and 60 centimeters tall. I have pretty much the same equipment as I've always used. Here you have the main return pump through the red line. It's a J-Bow 1200 or something, 12,000 I believe. Water, you can see here, teed off there and goes into this carbon reactor, which I change once every 6 months to a year whenever I feel up to it. And then water goes along this 1-inch pipe straight up to the main display, and before that it tees off into a 3/4 inch here, and 3/4 inch goes across, tees off again, it tees off up there, goes left up to the bigger frag tank, and they're the returns for the frag tank. And then there's the main drain for the big frag tank. Then along the silicone tube, jerry rigged, going all the way. Here's up to the top frag tank. Past a bunch of wires, past a pump. That is always left fully open, that valve. Goes in here to this algae ridden spray bar, as you can see. Okay, it's just PVC hole with holes drilled in it. And water goes across the top, flows across the frag rack, down into this drain. It's got like two strainers. One is an emergency overflow, the bottom one is the main drain. That main drain then flows down more silicone tubing past this valve into another spray bar. Same idea. Water flows across this frag tank. There's a bunch of anemones. And down into this drain. Again, same thing. You have an emergency overflow on top, and then the main drain goes back down here. So these two pipes are the emergency and the main drain. All flow into this area here, which I used to use as a refugium once upon a time. Next up, we have the skimmer. It's the same original skimmer I had since day one. It came with a Chunzi hydrofoamer pump. The only thing I had to change in all these years in this pump was the epoxy cracked on the magnet, so it started to rust. So I just get a new impeller, a new needle wheel impeller. Replace that. It's the same motor block, same everything from all those years ago. Here you see the air silencer. It's connected to a tube. This tube runs up along here, runs out of the sump there, and then here you see from here it runs outside. So I have a hole drilled through the window. Forgive the dirt here, all dust and cobwebs. That's the way I am, unfortunately. But yeah, so it's drawing in fresh air from outside, and here I have a fan that is blowing out the warm, moist air from the room. So try and help with humidity levels. The $10 fan does the trick. Here we have the ATO, the same ATO I've had since I started up this tank all those years ago. It's just a small, cheap pump, $5 pump you get with like your first fish tank or something, with like the spray bar taken off, and I just filled up that hole that was for like the air intake with some glue and just jammed in a 1/4 inch Oro DI tube, and that just sits into these buckets, these 20-litre jugs that I have. They're the same ones I had from the original setup, and it just fits in here, and that is plugged into my Apex, which I'll show you later. So that tube goes into a float valve. Here you see that float valve there, which the RODI tube goes into. It's just held down with a piece of kitchen tile that's silicone to the sump, and there's the tube that goes back into the little pump. That little pump is connected to the Apex. The Apex just acts like a timer, so it turns on for like 5 minutes every couple hours. This is a great ATO system, super cheap, costs the price of a tiny pump and a float valve. That's all it really takes, and it's worked very well for me for the past 8 or so years. Here we have the calcium reactor. It's a Skims calcium reactor, can't quite remember the model number. It's an in-sump calcium reactor. It has one single pump. The pump acts as a recirculating pump and as a feed pump. So it's one pump that does everything. And here you can see is connected to this blue CO2 tank, which is fed by this regulator. At the back of this regulator is a solenoid. The solenoid is connected to the Apex, which you can turn it on or off, which delivers gas to the calcium reactor when it's needed. Now there's the solenoid there. Now this rarely ever has to turn off because where I have it set, it's controlled with this pH probe. This pH probe also goes to the Apex. This pH probe is monitoring the pH inside the reactor. Now as you see here, this is a very old probe. Judged by the label, it says November 2016. Now this probe was obviously when it was made, this date, but I have had this probe on here for about 3 years, I'd say. I might have calibrated once, I don't know. I don't usually calibrate my probes at all. Here is another pH probe that is used as my tank pH. This was made in February 2014. Now I know these probes might be very accurate, but at least they're consistent in their inaccuracies, meaning they don't fluctuate, mad fluctuations up and down. So As long as I get a stable, inaccurate reading, I don't mind. Next on to lighting. As you can see, I've stuck to the tried and tested black boxes. This is a new-ish 4-foot long fixture that I got. It comes with a built-in timer. Here you can see I've covered the remote control sensor with some electrical tape, because if I had left the fish room door open and I was watching TV, when I turned the volume up or down, one of the channels would turn on and off. So if you want a light fixture that you can control with your TV remote, this fixture is for you. Besides that, it works great. It doesn't ramp this fixture. It just can turn on and off at a certain time. You set the intensities with those blue dials. You control 2 channels. Here I have with the whites all turned off and the blues on. So you can see there's 2 types of LEDs. There's the royal blue and a more violet blue, which does give unbelievable pop to your corals. Now I turn off the blue channel and turn on the white channel. Now the difference between these fixture and other fixtures that I have is that even the white channel contains a good few blue LEDs. So they've removed some of the, or swapped out some of the white LEDs and put in more blue LEDs. Seeing as we do run our tanks more blue than white anyway, so why not use that channel for more blue? It still looks pretty yellow even with the blues in there. So I like to run my light around 80% blues on the blue channel and 30% on the white channel. Next we have the frag tank lighting. It's one black box. It's a rampable version, basically the same as the other one, just rampable version. It just hangs off this bracket, which is connected to a aluminium bar. It is screwed into the aluminium bar. Those cable ties are just in case, so don't worry. This one fixture covers a 1 meter tank, and here is the old T5 brackets that I used to have, but I don't run them anymore. It looks like 2 of my LEDs are actually shot there. Maybe they are. I better get them tested now. Never noticed that before. But yeah, it comes with this small remote control. Handy for switching between channels. If you want to like shoot something under a blue light, you can just press a button, it changes all the blue. I believe this is like a mostly blue and a little bit of white light in there. And here I turn it on to the moonlighting. So the moonlighting is just like 4 of those violet LEDs. Can't really see it now because the light from the other tank is polluting it. Moving on to the frag rack system. I've gone for 2 different kind of options here. I went for low profile options because there's not much space in between them. On the top tank I went for LED bars, 2 LED bars and 1 T5 in the middle. These LED bars are from China as well. They're like $60 each. Here you can see a bit of tape I've put across the green LEDs because the green just stands out too obvious. Corals look very green underneath them. And 1 KZ blue bulb in the middle. I think it looks nice actually. It has a nice white light look to it. Daylight, I should say. At the bottom, to keep the profile low as possible so I can get in easily, is 3 T5 fixtures. Or sorry, yeah, individual fixtures with KZ blue bulbs in it. Very blue, in my opinion, but does have the tried and tested reputation of T5s to help grow corals. So yep, this is what my lighting in my fish tank room is. Someday I'd like to upgrade. And for flow on these tanks, I'm using MaxPec gyres for the main display. The one on the left, the first one you saw, is over 6 years old, and the second one there is about 3 years old. I'm controlling the both from the gyre controller. Great pumps. No fault with them over the last few years. Clean them once a year to keep maintain them. Here's a look at the controller again. I have it on the setting where you can adjust each hour or each period of time through the day. It's kind of hard to see what's running now, but it's on number 10 for example, and I have a very random system. Here I have a battery backup that's connected to the controller. Now only in case of there's the connector there. In case of a power outage, only one of the gyre pumps work. That one there. It only runs at 10%, so the battery will last longer. You can see it's actually a bit higher than the other one. That's because I wanted to agitate the surface area of the water to help gas exchange in the event of a power outage. For the frag tank, here you can see it's one of the old original J-bows that I have. It's one of the ones that are still working, so it's basically pointed down here. And here's the controller for that J-bow pump. It's a WP40 I believe. It was the original pumps I had when I set up the tank first. It's still working. It just pointed at the base of the frag tank here to try and try this up. Here's an RW8 or 4, I can't quite remember. It's been running for years too. It's great. Here is the controller for a different pump. This is the RW pump. As I said, it's been working great. It's also pointed at the base of the frag tank, trying to keep the triders off the bottom. Down here is a new purchase I got. It's one of those J-bow crossflow pumps. I think CP150 or something. It's only had it for about the last 2 weeks, but it throws out a lot of flow. There you can see it dunking, and this is on the lowest setting right now. So it is. I'm going to turn up the setting here now, just to crank it up a bit. So I crank it up to full power on wave mode, and it does create quite a big wave, as you can see here. Any stronger and the water will be coming over the sides. So yeah, I usually just keep it on the lowest setting, and you can see there the anemones in the basket really like that wave motion. So yeah, lots of flow for that tank. Again, trying to keep all the detritus away from the bottom, from settling in the bottom. Down into the overflow, down into that actual place where the refugium used to be. Sediment settles there, so I can just once a week, when I do a water change, I can just suck out the detritus that accumulates in that old refugium area. And here's the Apex control module. Your display module here. It shows you the temperature, the pH, and the pH of the calcium reactor. Here's a bit of tape I put on the top just to keep water off it. Still some gets on, but it's still working. It's the older Apex module or system. Here you can see the energy bar only has 6 plugs. There's the main brain, which is 2 pH probes connected, a temperature probe, and a breakout box. Now when I say breakout box, I mean a hodgepodge of wires that I've spliced together to make a breakout box. So how to make a breakout box for the Neptune Apex? I would have bought one Apex if you had them on sale in Korea, but you don't sell them in Korea, so I made my own. So a quick search on YouTube or on Google basically tells you to get a mini DIN 8 cable. So here's a little 8-pin mini DIN cable. Got it online for a few bucks. That plugs into your Apex module. Then the other end of that I cut off so I had access to the cables. So each of those pins is represented by a different color cable, and you might see like a hodgepodge of cables over there. So basically, I have two things connected to this, for lack of a better word, breakout box. I have a float switch and a leak detection system. So basically, you have one ground wire, and you connect one end of your float switch and one end of your leak detection system to the ground wire, and then a different color cable will be a different switch in your apex. So then the other ends are connected to a float switch. So here's the float switch that is in the sump. So whenever the water level goes too high, for example, if I turn off the returns, the float switch will turn off the skimmer so that doesn't overflow, which often happens if I forget to turn off the skimmer. When I turn off the main power, the cup would overflow constantly, so that stops that. Here is my fancy leak detection system. It is just a power cord, an old power cord from something that I cut the end off, and a piece of tissue. So here is the 2-pin power cord as we have here in Korea. You can actually see it's been corroded. It's got like that green corrosion on it because it actually has worked a couple times and saved me. Not saved me from massive things, but little leaks that I wouldn't have been aware of. Basically, the salt water soaks into the tissue connects or completes the circuit, and that alerts the breakout box, and then sends me an email or makes a sound. So yeah, it has worked a couple times for leaks of various different reasons that have happened. Alright, that about does it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'm just going to leave you with now some eye candy. Some actinic blue with a gel filter on. So thanks for watching again, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.